Hey, I'm Amanda from Trifecta Fitness. We're proud to be Clarksville's new Get Fit headquarters. Trifecta Fitness is a state-of-the-art spin and strength training studio. Our spin studio is truly one of a kind in this area, complete with 20 state-of-the-art live fitness bikes and an incredible sound system. Our strength training is done in small groups of 6 or fewer, and all of our strength and spin classes are scalable for every level of experience. Come see us in the heart of Clarksville, just behind MAPCO at the corner of Old Trenton Road and Wilma Rudolph Boulevard. Call us for more info at 931-542-6265 or download our Trifecta Fitness app for a full list of upcoming classes.
Hey, I'm Logan. I'm a Sergeant First Class in the Army, and I've been lucky enough to secure one of the charity slots provided by the Lifetime Foundation for next year's Leadville 100. In order to do this, I'm looking to raise around $2,800 over the course of the next year to donate to the Lifetime Foundation. A lot of their focus is on youth movement and nutrition and conservation, among other things. And it's a really great cause, and I appreciate any help that you guys could give. And a little bit goes a long way, and it'd be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
In October 2019, Arlington, Texas was chosen to be the home of a new national museum, unlike any other. The National Medal of Honor Museum will be a unique home of military history. The 100,000 square foot museum will house exhibits, archives, and artifacts relating to the 3,500 U.S. troops who have been awarded the medal, the nation's highest honor for valor in combat. The museum will have 31,000 square feet of galleries dedicated to U.S. troops who have received the award. The museum CEO, former Navy SEAL and NASA astronaut Chris Cassidy, said the museum will focus on education as much as preservation. The building will have 5 areas dedicated to Medal of Honor winners from the Army, Marine Corps, Navy, Air Force, and Coast Guard. The main gallery will be located in a central plaza under a 25,000 square foot slab of steel, which will appear to be suspended in midair. It will be supported by 5 pillars. Black Rifle Coffee is a corporate sponsor of the museum, as are the Dallas Cowboys. The museum's board also includes over a dozen major corporations and 6 Medal of Honor recipients, including David Bellavia, Patrick Brady, and Britt Slabinski. Army Staff Sergeant Bellavia was awarded the medal for clearing an entire house by himself on November 10, 2004, as a squad leader in support of Operation Phantom Fury in Fallujah, Iraq. He killed 4 enemy fighters and wounded a 5th in close quarters battle. Army Major General Brady flew and coordinated the evacuation of 51 seriously wounded men during a firefight in Vietnam in January 1968. Slabinski, a Navy SEAL chief and team leader, led a rescue team of SEALs during Operation Anaconda in Afghanistan in March 2002. Slabinski and his team flew to a mountaintop ambush site to rescue Petty Officer First Class Neil Roberts, who had fallen from the back of a helicopter. Slabinski led the team through almost constant combat against an entrenched Taliban force. Along with the board members, former presidents Jimmy Carter, Bill Clinton, George W. Bush, and Barack Obama serve as honorary directors. The museum is expected to open to the public in late 2024.
All right. Welcome back.
Misfit Nation, the Misfit Nation Show.
We are a show founded by a veteran and hosted by 2 veterans and a military spouse. Our mission is to get people to tell their stories to the world. If you're an author, share your tips with the Misfit Nation. If you're a musician or an actor, our audience needs to know how they too can get into the business. Coaches, we love our coaches. Come on and share your tips with the Misfit Nation to help them become better versions of themselves. If you are a corporate leader or an entrepreneur, come on and show how you did it and how hard you have fought for success. If you are a veteran, first responder, or Gold Star family, we would love to have you come on and share your story with the Misfit Nation. We always have time for you. If you're feeling down, alone, or starting to see the darkness, stop. Think about those who are around you. You are not alone. You will be missed. If you feel like your problems will be a burden to those in your inner circle or feel embarrassed, dial 988. If you are a veteran, take option 1. We need you to keep pushing forward. Don't make a permanent solution to a temporary problem. If you are a new listener, welcome to the Misfit Nation Show. Be sure to subscribe to our show on your favorite podcast app. Also on our YouTube channel, at @the_MisFitNation. Subscribe and click the bell to keep you up to date on our latest episodes and all of our news. You can also find us on Heroes Media Group and About Face Radio. Now, let's get to the show!
All right. Welcome back to the Thursday after dinner show. We have a good one tonight. We have great news tonight. There were no names added to the end of watch list in the last 2 days, so we finally did it. We made it 2 days. That's a great thing, a great accomplishment. And an update on Sergeant Sarah Roque at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. As we told you on Tuesday night, they found her body after she was declared missing on Monday. They found her body Tuesday. It was stuffed in a dumpster. There is a person of interest being talked to by Army CID at this time, so hopefully they get closure on that case, and the alleged perpetrator, gets put in the place he or she needs to go to, and her family gets some closure. Tonight we have a good one. One more, public service announcement for me. Most states right now are doing early voting. I'm not going to tell you who to vote for. That's up to you. Do your research, do your due diligence. But I am going to go tell you, vote. Because if you don't vote, I don't want to hear you on the second week in November crying about who did not win or who did win. Because you didn't let your vote cast. Vote in your local stuff as well. That's even more important than the stuff at 1600 right now. Vote in your local elections and make a difference in your communities. So our next guest, he's a retired lieutenant colonel from the United States Army. He's an internationally recognized keynote speaker and author of Your Leadership Legacy. He has 40 plus years of leadership experience in combat during peacekeeping operations, disaster relief, and in the boardroom. He's passionate about passing on his wealth of knowledge and lessons learned to leaders all over, and especially to the Misfit Nation tonight. So without further ado, let's welcome Oakland McCulloch to the Misfit Nation. Welcome, Oak.
Hey, how you doing, Rich?
Doing great. Thanks for taking your time tonight to hang out with us from beautiful Daytona, Florida. You could be out watching NASCAR, get ready for next year, or you can hang out with us, and I think you made the right choice.
Yeah, well, I'm looking forward to it. This should be a good conversation.
Outstanding. Oak, I gave basically a 30-second introduction on you right there. Please go back as far as you want to go and tell us a little more about you from that way back then to how we got here.
Yeah, so I grew up in Northern Illinois, which is why I live in Florida, because I'm never living through winters like that ever again. And grew up in a small little farm town, 1,200 people. Played basketball, baseball, football in high school. Captain of my team. I was student government president, class president. So leadership for me started kind of early, and then went off to the United States Military Academy at West Point. I did not graduate from West Point. I was there for a little less than 2 years, and then came home, helped my father run the bar that he had bought for about 18 months, and then went back to school, finished up in ROTC at Northern Illinois University, which was about 12 miles from my dad's bar, so I could come home when I needed to and help. And that's where I met my wife in Army ROTC. She was an Army nurse for 8 years as well. And that's where we met 37 years ago. And then got commissioned as an infantry officer, did my first 5 years in the infantry. And then I switched over to Armor Cav, and I did my last 18 as an Armor Cav officer. The last assignment, I ran an Army ROTC program at the University of South Alabama in Mobile. Retired from that job, retired from the Army in 2009, ran a food bank for a couple of years. You don't get any different than that. A combat arms officer, a food bank, that's a 180-degree difference.
Polar opposites, yeah.
Yeah, and I didn't know anything about a food bank except that it had food in it. That's about it. And I did that for about 2 years and made some changes there that are long-lasting, and came up with some things to deal with the problems that we had, because I took over that job about a month before the BP oil spill. And our food bank covered the whole Gulf Coast of Mississippi, the whole Gulf Coast of Alabama, and about a third of the panhandle of Florida. So we were a little busy. All those people who made their living in the Gulf couldn't go out there. So we had to add them to list of people that we were feeding. So we had to make some major changes. Then they offered me to come here to Daytona, recruit for Army ROTC as a Department of the Army civilian. I did that for 13 years. Published my book in February 2021. Retired from my government service job at last October, a year ago. And now I'm just out on the speaking circuit talking about, and I do a lot of first responder conferences, but I've done everything from HR conference to fiduciary association conferences, healthcare risk management. I just signed a contract Monday in January. I'm going to be in San Antonio talking to the Independent Electrical Contractors Association. So, people ask me all the time, who do you talk to? And I said, leaders and people who want to be leaders, because let's face it, leadership is leadership. I don't care where you learned it. I don't care where you practiced it. Leadership is about people and trust. And every profession needs good leadership. I don't care what it is.
That's 100% correct. And I was looking at your bio and I seen you had the burnt jalapeno on your chest there. You were in 24th Infantry Division, obviously, during Desert Storm.
That's right.
Who were you with there?
I was with the division headquarters. I was the general's aide there during the war.
My first duty assignment was Fort Stewart, and I was with
that was my first duty assignment as well. Yeah.
315th Infantry there.
Yeah, I was in 315. Yeah. Well, when I started, it was 319.
Right.
And then they switched it over to 315 in preparation to move to 3rd ID, to change from 24th to 3rd ID. And so it was my last platoon. I had 2 Bradley platoons, an ITV platoon, and a mortar platoon in 315, 319, 315. So
nice. China Bandits. Yes. Great memories from you there.
Yeah. That was my wife and I's first duty station as well. And we loved it there.
That's where I met my wife. She was from Savannah at the time. So a lot of links right there.
Yeah.
And now we're up here in Tennessee. But you had a myriad of experiences throughout your military career. That was, like you said, that's your start of your career. And then you lasted a long time in the military without losing your hair. You still got good hair on your head there. And you got to do ROTC at the end, where you were able to kind of share your experiences with the younger minds as they were becoming leaders. How did that feel when you were able to give back to that next generation as they were about to become the next leaders of our country?
Yeah, I've been lucky. I had those 3 years as a professor of military science. So I had those cadets were mine. It was my job to mold them and train them and develop them and coach them and mentor them to get them ready to go out there and be leaders, not only for the Army, but for the nation. Because you know as well as I do, a lot of officers do their minimum time and then they get out, and that's okay. They go out in the civilian world and they do great things for our civilian companies as well. They take that leadership that they learned and they go out there and apply it in the civilian world. And then my 13 years here, I was, helping do the same thing as the Army recruiter, Army ROTC recruiter. And all totaled, I've had my hand in commissioning one way or another over 600 lieutenants over the last 16 years of my time associated with the Army. And I tell people all the time, I wouldn't have traded that for a minute. I loved being a professor of military science because I really do believe, which is why I do what I do now, that it is our responsibility as current leaders or people who have been in leadership positions to pass that on to that next generation. Because if we don't do it, they are our future. And if we don't do it, then who's going to do it? And we are going to reap what we sow. If we don't do a good job of creating that next generation of leaders, then we deserve everything we get. And, I always believed that and I always knew that. But what really cemented that to me when I was the professor of military science there at the University of South Alabama, I had a great guy work for me, Master Sergeant David Powell. And I say he worked for me. He was probably a better leader than I was. And one day we were sitting there talking about the significance of what we were doing, creating that next generation of leaders for the Army and for the nation. And he looked over at me and he said, "Sir, great leadership handed down from generation to generation is what develops great nations." And I thought, wow, what a powerful quote. And the most powerful part of that quote now that as I'm looking back, the most powerful part of that quote is that you can substitute that word nations for anything you want: a university, a food bank, a hospital, a business, whatever. Because again, every organization in every profession at every level needs good leadership.
That's right. 100% they do. And if I thought, like on your bio there, that you like to share your wealth of knowledge. And for a long time, there was people that wanted to hold that in their back pocket. Like if they gave it away, maybe something bad would happen to them if they gave their knowledge to someone else and they maybe became better than them.
Yeah.
I always thought as a leader, that was my job, to make the next me or the next person above me. And
Absolutely.
that was my goal, to make everyone succeed and me be able to go out to pasture and with my thumbs up saying we did great jobs.
That's right. And I'm a huge proponent of mentorship. I was lucky in my life. Starting in high school, I had some great mentors in high school, and I still stay in contact. My basketball coach, Coach Terry Niedzwiecki, and we still stay in contact. And then my high school history teacher, which is why I majored in history in college. I mean, he had that kind of an impact on me, who just died about a year ago. So, but up until that point, we stayed in contact. And they really were what I preach, servant leaders. They understood, like my basketball coach understood, that his job was not primarily to develop a great basketball team. We had a good basketball team. He did a good job as a coach, but he realized that his main job was to develop good young men who were going to go out and be good husbands and good fathers and good citizens. And he absolutely did that, because a lot of us stay in contact with him and have over the years. And that's, so I always tell people, look, have a mentor, be a mentor. And if you don't have a mentor, go find one.
Yes.
And it doesn't have to be anybody in your profession, in your organization. The only requirement for somebody to be your mentor, three requirements. They got to have some knowledge that you want. You got to trust them, and they got to want to be your mentor. That's it. And then for us, when I go talk to a CEO of a company, or the police chief or fire chief of a department, one of the first things I ask them is, who are you mentoring?
Yep.
And if they can't tell me by name who they're mentoring, I got to question whether or not you're really a leader.
Yep.
Because that is our job. That is what we're here for, is to help coach, develop, mentor these new young leaders and make them the best that they can be. Because again, we are going to reap what we sow, I promise you.
And I like that you said servant leader. And I think a lot of veterans, as they're coming out now and they're getting with organizations that promote servant leadership, like Travis Manion Foundation, The Mission Continues, Team Rubicon, just to name a few. And of course, that's not all inclusive. There's 800,000 VSOs now for the military, but those three popped in my head right there. They all preach servant leadership. Travis Manion Foundation, we have a chapter here in Clarksville. I'm part of the leadership team. And one of the things we do is character does matter. And we go and mentor youth, either middle school, high school. I went to a jiu-jitsu dojo and did one, sat on the mat with the young kids. And my knees hurt getting onto the mat with them, but the pain goes away when you see that they're receiving what you're putting down. You're picking up what you're putting down, and their smiles grow, and you're able to grow them some swag. And you know that you made a difference, maybe just that day, or maybe in their whole life, just by being there that day. And that's what it's all about.
Well, that's exactly right. I'll give you two examples that I had recently. When I published my book, about, I don't know, 4 or 5 months after I published my book, I got a phone call, and I didn't recognize the number, but because I speak and people call me and ask me if I want to come speak, whatever, I answered the call. And the guy said, "You probably don't remember me, but I was a private in your company when you were a company commander. And we were out on the range, and you were walking around, and it was lunchtime, and you grabbed an MRE, came up on the tank, and there were 3 privates sitting there eating. And you sat down with us and ate and talked to us. And I remember that conversation. I didn't remember his name, but I do remember that conversation. And I remember I was asking him, so what do you want to do? where do you want to be 5 years from now, 10 years from now? And I said, you know, if you decide to leave the Army, then good for you. Just make sure you got a plan on what you're going to do when you leave. I said, but if you really like this and you might think about making it a career, either as an NCO or as an officer, go back NCO. Once you get out of the Army, go back to either OCS or ROTC or however you need to do it to get your commission. And he told me, he said, and I took your advice. He said, I did my time. I got out. I went through ROTC. I got my commission. I did 20 years as an officer. He said, and then I got out and I started my own business. So, you know, you really do have an impact on people. And one of the things I tell people is, look, you as a leader, you are going to have an impact on somebody every day. I promise. Make sure you have a good impact, not a bad impact. Yes. And the other story was right before I got done doing my recruiting job, I was up in Savannah at Hunter Army Airfield doing, we had a conference with all the recruiters in the brigade. And I was headed up that way. And a lady that I commissioned out of my program back in 2007 was stationed at Fort Stewart. So when she found out I was going that way, she said, we got to have lunch. And so we did. We met at a restaurant there in Savannah. And one of the first things she told me was, I just made the lieutenant colonel's list. You think that didn't make me feel old?
That's a
I was a lieutenant colonel when she was a cadet, and now she's made the lieutenant colonel. Now she has pinned on at this point. But I said, so what do you want to do after, now that you're going to be a lieutenant colonel? And she said, I only have one thing left that I want to do. And I said, what was that? And she said, I want to go back to the University of South Alabama, and I want to be the professor of military science, and I want to run that program just like you did. And I say that not to toot my own horn, but just to let you know that you do have an impact on people. And if you do it right, you have a great impact that's going to influence your organization, whether it's the Army or a company or whatever, for the next 20, 25, 30 years. You don't know how long that's going to impact that organization.
Exactly. Or that person, the individual person. And now that's a full circle moment there with that young officer, that young cadet you met. Now she's leading as lieutenant colonel, and wants to follow your footsteps back to the same place where you mentored her the first time, and maybe had the same opportunity as you did to retire from there and meet one of her cadets in X amount of years as lieutenant colonel as well. That's an awesome thing right there. I mean, if I had an applause button, I'd put it on there, but that's something I think we all strive for as leaders, though.
Yeah, it should be. It absolutely should be, you know, and not every cadet, not every one of the 600 that I've had my hand in commissioning over the years keeps in touch with me, but a lot of them do. You know, not every week or every month or even every year, but every so often they'll send me an email or a text or give me a call and say, hey, sir, I just got promoted to captain or to major, or, you know, and I just took over my company. You got any advice? Or, you know, all kinds of things that just make you feel good that you obviously made a good impression on them and helped them along the way.
I got to see outstanding mentorship on the battlefield in Ramadi, Iraq in 2004. We had an embed, you might know him, Lieutenant Colonel Oliver North was our reporter embed, and we were with the Marines. I was at a Big Red One at Fort Riley, so our brigade was there. And we had 2-4 Marines. First Mardiv was our headquarters, and we went downtown, and there was 2-4 Marines who were in contact, and there was a lieutenant there behind a vehicle. He went up there and mentored that young lieutenant into doing the right things in combat. All the while I'm telling him, sir, you can't do this. You can't do this, sir. But I just stepped back. You know what you're doing, sir. Go ahead. You got it. But I watched him, and he turned that lieutenant around. That lieutenant was kind of in that freeze moment, and he froze him and got it. He pressed the reset button on him and got him going. So it was an outstanding moment. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that is invaluable. I mean, what people who have been in those situations can pass on is invaluable to the young generation coming up as leaders. And we got to do that. It's our responsibility to do that. I really do believe that.
Definitely. And throughout your military career, what was your favorite assignment that you got to go to, or maybe overseas, wherever? What was your favorite place you ever got to serve?
So I would say two. One, in peacetime, by far, it was probably Command General Staff College at Leavenworth. And not the year that I was a student, although that was fine too. But I had already been in S3 of an armor battalion deployed to Kosovo, so they weren't sending me back out to be an S3 or an XO again. So they kept me there to teach tactics. Well, that was the first time in a long time, in any of time in my career, that I got to come home every night and eat dinner with my family. And I kind of say jokingly, but not entirely, I finally got to know my kids, and they would even tell you that was probably their favorite assignment for us, because I was home. I was home every night. I got to go to the ball games. I got to do all the things that you want to do as a father, but you don't always get that opportunity because we don't have a say, when we go and how we go and how long we're going to be gone. And then overseas, probably my deployment to Kosovo, we were the second unit in, and I was the operations officer for the armor battalion. And so, we parked our tanks. We were out there just like the infantry. We were walking patrols. We were in Humvees. We had platoons stationed in different little towns. And I got to run the day-to-day operation of the battalion. That was my job. And I took it, certainly that piece of it was very important to me, although I had two great captains who helped me come up with plans and what was going to happen the next week, kind of look out a little bit. My S3 Air and my S2, I combined the S2 and the S3 shop because it was so intertwined, the two of them, that I thought, why somebody comes up with an idea and it has to run down the hall to the next office and talk. I put them in the same office. My S2 and my S3 had a desk facing each other. And so I would start the day there. I'd start the day in that office, kind of get everybody moving in the right direction. Then I'd go to the TOC, which was in the same building. And I'd spend probably 30 to an hour in there making sure that everything was going okay. And then I got in my Humvee, me, my driver, and my security detail, and we were out. I went out to try to make it a point to go see as many people as I could that day, soldiers out there deployed in little camps in these towns, surrounded by people who didn't really like them and didn't want them to be there. And then I had meetings. One of the things of my job was to kind of try to bring the people back together, because you had the Albanians, the Serbs, and then you throw the Gypsies in on top of that, which neither side liked. To get them to come back together and start building back some kind of a society was really difficult. And when I first started, I would hold only a meeting with only Serbs in it, and then a meeting with only Albanians in it, and a meeting with only Gypsies in it. And they all started the same way for about the first month I was there, or 2 weeks. I think I let it go on for 2 weeks, maybe 3, where the first 10, 15 minutes, I would get a history lesson. Well, that side, you know what they've done to us over the last 2,000 years? And finally, I just said to him one day, I said, look, I'm a history major. I know the bad things that have happened in here, and you've both done bad things to each other. I don't care. Our job is to move from here forward to make this a safe place for you and everybody else. And then once I got that taken care of, and I stopped hearing the history lesson every meeting, then we started to get a couple things done in those communities. And then I started bringing the Albanians and the Serbs together and having a joint meeting, which was interesting to begin with. But eventually they started working together. They started talking to each other. I wouldn't say they trusted each other yet, but they were certainly going down that road. And then about halfway through, I threw the Gypsy leaders in as well and threw them into the mix. And we actually started to see things happen. There was a quarry that was before the conflict was owned by the Serbs, and after the conflict was owned by Albanians. Well, they couldn't do anything in the quarry because they didn't have explosives, and we weren't going to let them have explosives. So I went to the guy who was running the quarry, who was in charge of the quarry, and I said, look, you need explosives to blow up rocks. I can make that happen. I'm not giving you explosives, but I'll bring somebody in and we'll blow up whatever you want us to blow up, and you can start working. And he said, great, when can that start? I said, when you hire 5 Serbs. Because he had no Serbs on his. He said, well, I can't do that. I said, then I can't get you any explosives. And that went on for about a month. And he finally said, yeah, you know what? I think I can hire 5 Serbs. And he did. And we brought him in there, and I kept a team there. Anytime they were on that compound, I kept the team there to make sure they were safe. And originally, that you didn't see a lot of interaction between the Serbs and the Albanians. At lunchtime, they'd go different places and eat their lunch. And, they would only work together when they had to. But by the time we left 9 months later, they were having lunch together. They were talking. So it can be done. It's not easy. But by no means was it perfect at that point, but at least we'd started down that road. So that was, I got to do some amazing things as the S3 there. So that was probably my favorite operational or deployment that I did.
That's outstanding. And I like that you brought up the get to know your kids thing. I think everyone in the military can gravitate to that statement, especially those who served during conflict time, or even like when you first got to Fort Stewart and 319th Infantry or at headquarters. When I got to Fort Stewart, I think I was in the field 90% of the time.
Oh, absolutely. My wife, it's funny because my wife I've kept a journal since I was in the 5th grade.
Outstanding.
And I still do. That's just, self-discipline habit that I have. And she just decided, I don't know, about 3 weeks ago, right before the Hurricane Milton came through, she said, well, I want to go through all your old journals. And I said, I don't know why, but okay, here they are. And she's going through, and she just, I walk in and she's reading a journal, and I hear her laughing about some of the things that we did together when I was a lieutenant. And she's only at the lieutenant years right now. So, but yeah, I mean, it really, one of the things she said was, 1988, you weren't home very much. You were at NTC, a train up, gunnery. We did, I think that was the year we did Hurricane Hugo relief in Charleston. So yeah, I was gone a lot at Fort Stewart.
Yeah, that's it. I thought that's all you did in the Army was stay in the field. My first field problem was NTC from 350th Infantry. They said, "Are we going to the field?" So I thought we were going right there. We're loading the plane to go to California. So this is a different field out here. Okay.
Yes.
This is a big learning curve for me. This is awesome. And
yes, I always loved my time. I think I went to NTC as a player 3 times. And I was out there. One of my duty assignments, I was an OC out at NTC a couple of years, which I love that job too, because you were making a difference. You could see the difference you were making in those units that were rotating through there. So
definitely. We do have a question in the chat from Van457 on Google Chat. You have a diverse background in leadership. What principles will help today's leaders to succeed? Yeah,
that's a great question. And I'm a firm believer that whatever profession you're in and whenever you're a leader, the principles of leadership don't change. How you implement them, how you communicate them, how you interact with the people do change. And the example I use is, how I spoke to and led soldiers, combat soldiers, was certainly not how I led volunteers and people at the food bank. I still used the same principles. I still used the same tools. I just had to communicate them differently. But I get asked a lot, what makes a good, what traits does good leaders need? And and there's lots of traits and values that people need, but I always really go down to two that are absolutely essential. And if you get those two right, I think a lot of the other ones will fall into place. And that's integrity. You know, your character is beyond, has to be beyond reproach. Because the one time you're not truthful or you're not doing the right thing, and they find out, you're done. You as a leader is done. You might as well go do something else outside that unit, because they'll never trust you again. And again, leadership is about people and trust. I believe that 100%. And then I think what allows you to do those things, to make the right decisions in hard times, even when it might not be in your best interest, but it's in the best interest of somebody that you have the privilege to lead. And it is a privilege to be the leader, or the best interest of the organization. Even if it is in your best interest, you still have to do that as the leader. And what allows you to do those things is courage, personal courage, you know. And courage obviously has two parts. It's the physical courage, which as a combat arms officer, first responder, you need that. Most businesses don't. People who run a business, they don't need physical courage, but everybody needs to have that mental courage to force them to do the right thing, even if it's not in their best interest. And sometimes that's hard, but you got to do it as a leader. So integrity and courage are the two things that I think every leader has to have.
I think those are perfect right there. And we're taught that, it's like hammered into our heads as we're growing up in the military, about having integrity, doing what's right in the absence of orders, doing what's right with no one's watching, being able to do those things and do it second nature. Then, and you just do things the right way, knowing that you don't want to wind up that guy or that gal who loses the trust of their team, their platoon, or their company, and winds up just gone. And now they don't even have that family no more. They have to find a whole new way of doing things in life. So that's a very strong one there. Yeah.
You know, and I was lucky, you know, growing up, my father, who was a mean old man, that's absolutely how you can describe him. But I am who I am today because of him in a large part, no doubt about it. But growing up, I remember he always used to tell me, son, if you say one thing, but you do another, what you do will be believed, not what you said. And that always has stuck with me, that, you know, you really do have to set that example. You have to be that moral, ethical, and lawful compass of the people that you have the privilege to lead. And I always tell leaders, look, especially young leaders, when I was commissioning lieutenants, I said, look, the soldiers or the people that you are going to lead are just like children. They will do what you let them do. If you hold them to a standard and make them meet that standard, they will do that. If you let them do bad things, they will do bad things. I promise you.
Yes, they will. They will do amazingly bad things.
Yes.
It's how far can we take the mommy daddy rules sometimes?
That's right.
Or the daddy, whatever however your platoon section, whatever's made up, whatever the leadership model was, they'll play both sides of it until they get their way in, or until they fail miserably, and then you have to pick up the pieces. So that's the wild thing of leadership, and at all levels, even in the civilian world as well.
Absolutely, it is. I've seen it in the civilian world just as much as in the military. Yeah,
and I'm sure when you're giving speeches or going into corporations, either live or virtual, and they might have issues in there, and you're able to address them without them even asking you those questions, just by you speaking about how the success of your leadership as you grew up through the ranks, and that probably helps them even more.
Yeah, it's great to see that light bulb go off. You know, you walk into a organization, or you walk into a conference, and you talk about something, and you can see people in the audience or in the conference room when you're talking, that you see that you made a difference, that really did connect with them. And it's amazing, like at a conference, I'll do my keynote, you know, hour and a half keynote talk or whatever. And people will come up to me afterwards and talk to me for, half hour, 45 minutes, hour, whatever. I stay there till the last person wants to talk. I don't care what it is. And they'll come up and tell me about what resonated with them. And it's different with everybody. And as it should be, because they're all at different levels of leadership, and they're all at different levels of their leadership skills. Even if they're all police chiefs, that doesn't mean they're equal in their leadership skills. So one thing that I say maybe won't resonate with a very seasoned police chief, but it might resonate with a brand new one, and vice versa. So I always enjoy that piece of it, the interaction afterwards. And I try to get there the night before. I always tell whoever has me come, look, I want to come to the social the night before, and I want to talk to people because I want to get to know the people I'm going to talk to a little bit the next day. And I've gone to the social and talked to people and heard them griping and complaining about something, or, talking about an issue that their organization has. And I'll go back at 8, 9 o'clock at night, and I'll change my presentation for the next day because I'm there for them. So if that's the issue they want to talk about, I'm happy to include that in the talk the next day. Maybe I didn't have it in the talk, and I'll include that instead of something else.
I've done that. I go to USGLC, or United States Global Leadership Coalition. They have a seminar every June, around mid-June. They have the seminar up in DC. It's usually Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I'm sorry. So Monday, you get there Sunday night. Monday's all the events. So Sunday night is the actual, like, the social, the welcome social.
Right.
That's where I get most of my networking done right there.
Yeah.
I've learned more about everyone there. And then when you go into the breakout sessions, you kind of only get a little bit, half value of some of the people. So they don't want to show a lot of their stuff in a large audience. When they're more in that more intimate setting, they let themselves free. They have the courage to speak to you when they're in an intimate setting, and then more about them, and you're able to grow that relationship and know what they really need as you go forward.
Yeah, well, one of the things that about everybody coming up afterwards that kind of disappoints me is I wish they would have asked those questions, some of those questions that I get asked in the larger group, because I promise you, they weren't the only ones who had that question.
Exactly.
And it may have helped somebody else. And, my goal every time I go speak, wherever it is, to whatever audience, and every time somebody buys my book, is that my goal, my hope is at the end, whether you've read the book or you sit through one of my talks, is that everybody walks out of there with at least one thing that they can walk out of there and immediately implement to become better leaders, improve their leadership skills and ability, and empower the people that they have the privilege to lead to be better people and better workers and make the organization better. And if I do that, then if everybody walks out with that one concrete thing that they can walk away with, then I think I've done what my job was.
Definitely. You brought up the book again, Your Leadership Legacy, Becoming the Leader You Were Meant to Be. It's available on Amazon. When you do your speeches, or did you do like a book tour or anything like that as well, where you sat down and just did maybe a reading with people and get?
No, I didn't. I would have liked to. I just didn't know any better. I just, nobody had told me that was something I should do, or that I didn't even think about doing that. But I have a couple times, and I'm talking to a young lady right now to do it for a company in Ohio. I've had several companies who used it as their leadership development book. They bought it for everybody. They're all their junior leaders. They all read it and they went through it, and they kind of dissect different things. And I've had several that have asked me to come on a Zoom while they were doing that and answer questions. And I'm always happy to do that. This young lady in Ohio is looking to have me come in person to do that. And wow, that's awesome. I'd love to do that. And I've done one in person. I was at HR conference in Vermont, and the guy who put the conference together had done that with whoever. He bought a copy for anybody who wanted it. It was coming to the conference, and I think there were like 20 22 or 23 that were in that little group. And what the last day of the conference, he just had a little breakfast, and anybody who had participated came there, and we kind of talked about not only my book, we talked about other leadership books as well, but we certainly talked about my book, and I answered some questions, and always happy to do that.
Awesome. And on the book and on you, what's the best way for the audience to maybe get in contact with you if they want to talk to you just like I did, or they want to pick your brain on the book or just on any leadership topic?
Yeah, I love talking to people. I love networking and answering questions. I mean, this really is my passion. At this point in my life, my passion is to get my message out to as many people as I can. And I look at it, I got 4 ways to do that. I got my keynote talks, and if you have a conference that you think I'd be a good speaker at, then absolutely throw my name in there and let me compete to be a keynote speaker at your conference. And so I got my conference. I've got my social media, mainly LinkedIn. That's what I do most of my work on, and that's how we connected. And then I've got my book, and then I've got my blog, articles, comments, whatever I put out on the social media. And I just try to use all of the 4 of those as much as I can, because I just want to get my message out there that because we're not doing a good job creating leaders right now in this country. I see a huge deficit in the quality of leadership in this country right now, and it's our fault.
Yes.
It's our fault. I had somebody tell me at one time, well, this young generation. I said, stop. That's your fault. We aren't teaching them the right things.
Right.
So don't blame it on them. We got to do a better job of doing that, and that I take that responsibility on my shoulders. I turned 61 in January. I'll be 62 this January, and I had a buddy. I love to fish, and I'll fish in anything. Mud puddle. If I think there's a fish in a mud puddle, I'm fishing it. I don't care. And a good friend of mine said, "Oh, what are you doing? Why are you flying all over the country doing this? Why aren't you just going out and fishing every day?" I said, "I can't. This is my responsibility." And I really do feel that.
That's a great thing that you're doing, to share everything you've learned with hopefully the next generation, or even those who are leading the next generation right now. Maybe they can kickstart what we're lacking right now, fill that gap that we have right now, or that shortfall that we're coming upon with our leadership with those growing now.
Yeah, well, I think part of our problem, both in the young generation, but I see it in our senior leaders in professions today too, is lack of accountability and lack of responsibility. We're not holding everybody accountable, and everybody needs to be held accountable. I don't care from the lowest person in your organization to the boss. Everybody needs to be held accountable for their performance, for their actions, whatever. People have to be held accountable for those. Now, that doesn't mean you don't allow people to make mistakes. We're all going to make mistakes. I mean, nobody's perfect. I keep trying to convince my wife that I am, but she's not buying.
Good luck.
You think after 37 years I could convince her, but no. No, we're all going to make mistakes, and that's okay. You got to allow that. That's part of the learning process. But you got to hold people accountable. Just because you allow a mistake to happen doesn't mean that there's not accountability for it. And then responsibility, and I see this in leaders all the time, the lack of taking responsibility for their organization that they lead. Look, as a leader, you do not get to pick and choose what you're responsible for. Right. You can't say, well, that went really well, I'm going to take responsibility for that. That didn't go so well, I'm going to blame Rich for that. Sorry, leaders don't do that. You own everything in that organization. Your name's the name always on the blame line. I'm sorry. Yes. You can hold people accountable, and you can make people responsible for something that you've given them to accomplish. But if they don't accomplish it, it's still your responsibility as the leader. And we got to get back to leaders taking responsibility for their everything that does or doesn't happen in their organization.
Definitely. And that goes, like, if you look on a football team, if a punt returner drops the ball, the team loses, the coach gets fired, not the player.
Yeah.
So it's the coach ultimately or the leader in every other sense. So you gotta know your people, train them right, and treat them with respect, and lead them so they'll become the next leaders and lead the next people, their
That's
people, to become the next.
That's right. You pass that on, because that is your legacy. You know, because I get asked all the time, because I did name my book, Your Leadership Legacy. And they say, so what does that mean to you? What does the word legacy mean to you? And I always tell them, legacy has two parts. A very small part of your legacy is what you actually accomplish in your organization. That does matter. In the real world, results do matter. Maybe in fantasy land where everybody gets a trophy and everybody's a winner, maybe not. But in the real world, results matter. So you have to get results. If you don't get results, I don't care. You can do everything else good as a leader, but if you don't get results, you're not a good leader. So that does matter. But if that's the only thing you tie your legacy to, when the next person comes in and takes over your organization when you leave, because we are all going to leave one way or another. Either we're going to get fired, we quit, we die, something, we're going to leave. When that next person comes in and they change everything, then where's your legacy? Right. It's no longer your legacy. It's theirs. So your legacy is that next generation of leaders that you help produce, because they're going to be around for the next 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years in that organization or in another organization doing good things for them. That is your legacy, that next generation, who then trains the next generation in the way that you trained them. And that's that great leadership handed down from generation to generation, develops great, you name it, doesn't matter, whatever it is.
100%. And hopefully the Misfit Nation is writing stuff down. I'll put that in the chat as quick as you said it. I was typing it. Hopefully I didn't spell every word wrong this time, but they'll get the gist of it. Oak, what we ask our guests as we're about to close out is to give 3 things they believe the Misfit Nation can start doing tomorrow to make themselves better or make their community better. What would that be for you?
Yeah, I think number one, I think we got to get back to our values. You know, when I talk to people and I say, you know, you as a leader, you need to have your vision, your plan, and your culture, and all that needs to be tied together, and it all needs to be tied to whatever value. I say start with your values. That's where you start from, because it doesn't do you any good to get where you want to be 10 years from now if you don't like the person you are when you get there, or you don't like what your organization is when you get there. So you got to start with values. So I think we got to get back to values, and for most people that equates to going to church, religion, and if that's I'm a very, very religious person, so that certainly fits me. I don't care if that's not how you equate values. You just have values that have been imparted on you by your parents or by whoever. Then get back to those values. So I think that's number one. Number two, we got to hold people accountable and own up to our responsibilities, and that starts in the family. That's not just out there with your soldiers or the people that work for you when you're a leader. That starts in your family, because I think that's one of the things that's missing in this country right now, is that the family isn't starting them on the right road, these young men and women on the right road. Again, that's our responsibility as parents to do that. And then the last thing, and I always try to, even in my keynote talks where I talk about leadership, I always end with this, is, as a leader, you are going to make a difference in somebody's life every day. I promise you, somebody's life you're going to touch, you're going to make a difference in. Why not make a conscious decision to make that a positive difference? In the Catholic Church, we call that the holy moment.
Yep.
Go out, find one person. This is what I tell people. Go out and find one person, not 10, just one. If you can do 10, good for you and great for us and your community. But go find one person and make a positive difference in that person's life. Imagine how much better our families would be, our neighborhoods would be, our communities would be, our towns would be, our state, our country, the world would be, if everybody went out and made one positive difference every day in one person's life.
Yes,
it would have a huge ripple effect.
Oh, yes. And we say that here on the Misfit Nation and the Tuesday Crew. if my talk with you tonight reaches one person and makes their life better, we succeeded.
It was worth it.
We succeeded.
Yep, absolutely.
So it was awesome.
I agree.
So, Oak, this has been great, and the time flew by. I said 30 to 45, 50 minutes. We're at 55 right now without even knowing. So,
that's when you know you're doing it. It's a good conversation is when you look down at the clock, and I haven't even done it, which tells you how I feel about this conversation. I haven't even looked at the clock. When the time goes by and it's done, and it's like, well, we just got started.
Right. We got to go to a part 2 in a couple months. All right.
I'm happy to come back anytime you want, Rich.
I'll say I'd like you to come back for our other show, the Tuesday Crew. We'll put you on them for the first quarter of next year, January through March, and get you in there with them too. So you have different questions and a different set of people talking to you.
Yep, absolutely. I'd love to do it.
Outstanding, Oak. Thank you for coming on. And everyone, remember, we will not be on Sunday night. Our next show will be the Tuesday Crew. And then again, we'll be off for Halloween, because that is the best holiday of the year. So take care of your people and have a great night, everybody.
This message is from the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs. Did you serve in the military? If so, you can obtain a free lifetime pass to more than 2,000 federal recreation sites. These sites are located across more than 400 million acres of public lands, including national parks, wildlife refuges, and forests. The lands host activities to fit any lifestyle: hiking, biking, fishing, camping, and much more. Gold Star families are also eligible for these free lifetime passes. Plus, they cover entrance fees for a driver and all passengers in a car, or up to 3 additional adults at sites that charge per person. Obtaining one is easy. Just go to the National Park Service website, nps.gov, or the National Park Service app.
Thanks for checking us out and being a part of the Misfit Nation Show. Don't forget to visit our website at themisfitnation.com. That's themisfitnation.com. Check out all our past episodes and get some of the great Misfit Nation gear for you and your family. As always, be humble, stay hungry, and keep hustling, because we are
Misfit Nation.